Hi guys, Alisha Nightingale with Windermere Real Estate, Columbia River Gorge. I'm sitting here with Dave Ashburn, former Windermere agent, now Hood River County appraiser. Some people's best friend, some people's enemy. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to come on in. I was hoping to just take a moment to hear about what brought you to the Gorge, and then if you could tell us a bit about what you do at the county.
All right. Thanks for having me, Alicia. Good to be here. So I fell in love with the Gorge since I first visited. I went to school in Eugene, and my girlfriend at the time lived out here. And I visited once and knew that it's where I wanted to end up. So I've been here ever since and absolutely love it. It's been an interesting journey to get into my time as a real estate agent. Before that, I worked at a few different breweries in town. And then transitioned into real estate, and loved my time at Windermere. But just about a year ago, I transitioned over to working for Hood River County, and I'm enjoying my time as a property appraiser. It's been interesting to learn that process and see how it relates to what I did as an agent.
Perfect. Thank you. So for those that don't know, what exactly does a county appraiser do? How do they value property? And how can a property owner expect that information to be utilized?
Yeah, it's a different process than what people typically think of when they think about an appraisal. Most people are more familiar with what happens when you're trying to get like a mortgage, and that's really in-depth and specific for your one property. Working for the county, we're doing mass appraisal. So we're trying to make sure that we have an accurate value for every property in the county, which means we have to do much more in less time. So the process is mostly based on the cost, and that's all from nationalized resources where they figure out how much it costs to replace a building with something of similar function. And that's our baseline. And so what we do is we go off of aerials, we go off of in-person visits, and we sketch out every property and we input it into the software. And that gives us a baseline for how much it would cost roughly to reproduce that house. And then we take it a step further and combine it with a market approach, which you're familiar with. Mm-hmm. And we actually look at all the sales that happen in Hood River County every year, and we compare that to what our values are on the book based on the cost. And we use trending analysis and all sorts of fancy math to find out a ratio that we can apply that brings our cost basis value up to the actual real market value of Hood River County.
Okay.
And that's done every single year.
Okay. Wow. Every year.
Yep.
Okay. So that's really interesting. So you're combining the replacement value and the market comps to get a final value.
Yep.
What is the term millage rate? Do you guys use that?
No. I think it was on our test because you have to get licensed to become a certified property appraiser for the state. Uh-huh. And that word was on there, but we don't use it on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And so when you assess a property, do you guys, is it really based on bedrooms and bathrooms and what other things add value or detract value?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's more based on the type of home that it is, the type of construction, the quality of the materials that go into what we use because we use a classing system. That sort of sets our benchmark for the price per square foot that is calculated to estimate the replacement cost. Things like bedrooms are less important than things like bathrooms, but we definitely take into account bathroom specifically, kitchen features, the really typical high value areas where people tend to customize more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then what about outbuildings or porches or landscaping? Anything that's outside of the home that's taken into consideration?
Yep. Yeah, we look at all of it.
Okay.
That's part of our responsibility is looking at everything on the property, including the land. So we're doing evaluations on land value, any sort of accessory building. And what we do is mostly residential in Hood River County, but we also work with every single farm and orchard and the commercial and industrial, all those fun accounts. So yeah, it's a wide variety of things, and I've only been doing it for a year,
Yeah.
so I'm still learning the ins and outs and intricacies. But in general, I'm starting to get a hang of it, and yeah, so we definitely look at landscaping. To come back to your question, we analyze differences down to like, is it a rural place where they're going to have septic systems versus in the city where they're going to be on sewer. And so we take into account things like that by doing different studies every single year.
Oh, that's interesting. So going back to that, if we had an exact house, apples to apples in every regard, but it was on public sewer versus septic, which one would be valued more?
Oh man, this is the study that I actually did. But I believe the values were estimated to be higher in rural areas than in the city. But we're not going to look specifically at every single property if it's got like a well and septic or like a well and sewer. It's more based in general zones of the county where typically what you see in this location is that they're going to need to be on septic, they're going to need to be on well water, and then we come up with that value for that neighborhood, which is always adjusting, but yeah.
So more to do with the desirability of the area or location versus this feature versus this feature, or public sewer versus septic. It's just the area versus.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Accessibility, really. How much work had to go into getting this land ready for a house.
Okay.
And so, in some areas it's pretty accessible. There's already power on the road right next to it. In other areas that are more rural, they got to go a mile from the existing power to get it to this new housing area. So, yeah.
Okay, so when you guys are updating these appraisals every year, how does that impact a property owner? What is that appraisal used for?
So we don't look at every single house individually every single year. We try to keep an eye out for properties that have changed, and there's a variety of ways that we do that. One of the main ones is based on permits. So we'll check those and check on the progress made. And the tax date, the tax cutoff that we're assessing at for Oregon is New Year's. So that's the day we're trying to figure out what the property was like on that day. So obviously we can't be at every single property in the county on the first.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we start from. And then every county in Oregon, the goal is every 6 years to reappraise every property.
Okay.
Yeah, so the county's broken up into different areas like we were talking about before. And then the goal is to work through each one of those areas year by year so that over 6 years you see every property.
Okay, that makes sense. And so once a property is reevaluated, say they've put in building permits for a kitchen remodel, it's likely that their property taxes are going to go up, correct?
That's hard to say. Oregon,
Okay.
Yeah, this is one of those things where I've refreshed myself on the notes. Yeah. Oregon has one of the most complex tax laws out of any state in the U.S.
Okay.
Which I didn't know until I was studying up on it. But it's a little bit complicated. So generally people will see there's a real market value on their taxes, and that's what we've been talking about and what agents would be going off of. How much would it sell for, right? And then there's an assessed value, which is what they're taxed based on. And that goes back to actually like 1996. So we calculate back, what would this building have cost in 1996, take off 10% of that value, then go up 3% every consequent year. It's complicated math.
Really?
Luckily, we've got computers now. We're not doing it all by hand.
Why 1996?
That's when
That's just
voters decided to set this up. Yeah, or I think
Okay.
they did it in '97. So they,
Okay.
but yeah, so that's the way the maximum assessed value works, and then what you're taxed on is either whatever's lower, the real market value, or that maximum assessed value. But it's almost always that maximum assessed value, because going back to 96, 10% off, and then only going up 3%.
Interesting.
As you know, the market usually goes up more than 3%.
Yes.
So trying to circle back to your question as how would your taxes change? There's also rules about how much value is added in what duration of time. So your taxes won't change other than that 3% in general, unless those improvements you made are more than, I believe the number is $10,000 in a year.
Okay.
So if it was a large kitchen remodel and maybe you did some other stuff, whatever, the value goes up more than $10,000.
Yeah.
That's going to change your taxable base value.
Okay.
And it's not going to change at all to the real market value. It's just going to add on the value of that change.
Okay. So if you did a $50,000 kitchen remodel, then it's adding $50,000 to the assessed value, or just a percentage
hypothetically in a perfect world, but what we'll do is more general than that, just based on the way we calculate it. You know, it's not, we don't get people's receipts, so we have to estimate, you know, the change.
Yeah, based on materials used or things like that.
Yep.
Okay. And so say someone does those building improvements and their property does get reassessed and they're not happy with that number. Can they appeal what their assessed value is and what their property taxes are?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. It's we have open communication with the community, because that's, you know, the people we're serving, and we're a part of the community as well. And so we encourage people to, you know, go on the website, learn about how the process works, reach out to us. Records and Assessment is the office, and all the information's on the county website. Okay. But usually the first step is to talk to somebody in our office, and we can make sure that mistakes weren't made. You know, there wasn't things that we missed or that they, you know, didn't realize we saw, which happens sometimes. So that usually is a good first step to clear the air. And then there's also an official appeal process. If we're not able to change the value based on what we believe is correct, you know, to match what you want it to be, then there is the official appeal process, which I believe it's like a $35 fee to apply or something like that. And that goes to the Board of Property Tax Appeals, which is usually just referred to as BOPTA. And then in that process, there is a group of local community members that are generally real estate experts. I believe maybe you've done it, or
Tanner actually sat on the BOPTA board for a while. Yeah.
So real estate agents help out, and then they hear both sides, and you know, the taxpayer provides their supporting evidence to say what they think the value should be, and the county explains why we think it's something different, and then the board generally comes to a conclusion that is mutually acceptable.
Great.
Otherwise, it can go up and up. But yeah, the community always has a chance to, you know,
to appeal if they decide or feel like it was an unfair assessment.
Yeah, because that's the goal, and that's what the statutes are, is that we're supposed to be accurate. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are kind of a lot of the high level questions that I had. Are there any regular questions that you are receiving all the time? Do you get the same kind of questions often? And if so, what are those?
A lot of it is just people trying to understand the way that the taxes work in Oregon, because there's not a whole lot of explanation when people see their bill. They just see, you know, 5 different numbers, and it's like, what do these all mean? So a lot of it's just that, and, you know, wondering where the values come from, which we're happy to explain, and people can always come in and ask that sort of thing. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think that was all really helpful information. And if someone wanted to know a little bit more about either the appraisal process or how their properties being taxed. Is there any online resources, either at the state or county level, websites or anything like that, that would be helpful for someone to know?
Yeah, absolutely. The Oregon Department of Revenue are the people that set the general higher level rules, and they have the resources all on their website. Some of it can get in detail, but it's all there. And then there are other good resources, just, if you Google it, and in Oregon specifically, because it can get complicated, but there's some good videos on YouTube and stuff that are animated and kind of can walk you through it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then if someone had a little more specific questions, I know you said to reach out to the department. Do you field those specific questions, or is there someone else in your office?
Sure. Yeah, they can ask for me specifically, Dave Ashburn, or, if they call, we'll get them to somebody that can help them. Yeah.
Great. Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much. This was very informative, and I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
And we miss you around the office so much, but I'm
know,
so
I
glad
miss you
that
too.
you're off doing great things and you're helping us a ton. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Thanks.